Okay. Okay, folks, hopefully you're back and refreshed. We are downhill to the weekend from here. Just one thing to mention just before we leave CRMs completely. I did realise that I meant to mention to you, in addition to the challenges that we mentioned that kind of arise relating to all of the enterprise applications, something particularly to think about when we're talking about CRM is actually to think about the nature of the data that you're holding, because quite often the data that you're holding is actually individuals' personal data. Okay, and it may include information like their payment history, their credit history. It may include information about their payment methods, etc. Okay, so perhaps think carefully about legally the obligations that you have in terms of that data. Okay, but also I would say think about it from an ethical perspective as well. All of the institutes at the moment are really pushing this idea of our ethics as accountants and the importance of considering ethical factors. So think not only about the legal responsibilities that we have in respect of individuals' data, but also I think from an ethical perspective, how we should use that data and for what purposes. I think it's just worth flagging that. Okay, so this section is going to be much, much shorter. We are just going to talk quickly about information systems in a competitive business environment. Can I suggest that you have a look at the educator's briefing again? If you want to go again to page 3, section 5, education focus. And if you want to look at core item 1 of 4, okay, what that says, don't mind me, find my own. One of the core aspects, and it's there as the very first core aspect, is the role of information systems in today's competitive business environment. In particular, the links between information systems and business performance. Okay, so the links between how can information systems help, hinder, help us to achieve a good, optimal business performance. It suggests that this includes the strategic business objectives of information systems, the organizational, management and technological dimensions of systems deployed in today's business environment. Okay, so there are a couple of aspects of that that we want to look at. That's a core area of our syllabus. We're looking for specific knowledge here, but this time it's not about a specific technology, it's about systems, it's about strategies, etc. So actually what I want to focus on over the next couple of minutes is really to look at the role of information systems in terms of responding to competitive forces. So there's a lot of reference there to today's business environment. What are the competitive forces in that environment? What might these be? How do businesses engage with those, and how information systems can help? Want to look at achieving strategy, and that's actually going to be where we focus. Okay, what might our strategies be? Okay, so we're going to talk through some generic business strategies on how information systems can potentially help businesses to achieve those strategies. And actually also we'll talk about information systems, but you'll see from the questions, sometimes we're also talking about how a specific technology can help to achieve that strategy as well. And you'll particularly see that in the case study questions. And the last thing is just about sort of thinking about delivering optimal business performance. The last part, just with the reference to the organisational, management and technological dimensions of systems. I'm not going to look at that in this particular session, but it is there in Loudon. Chapter 1, have a look at that, and it's a good chapter 1, in fact, in its entirety, is a really good overarching kind of sense of these ideas around strategy and performance, etc. Really helps to frame what we then go on to talk about in the rest of the syllabus and in the rest of the textbook as well. Okay, so from that chapter 1, Loudon and Loudon suggests that information systems can help to achieve 6 strategic business objectives. Okay, so we're going to just quickly chat our way through these strategic business objectives, what they might be. So here's your example of knowledge about strategy that's not necessarily about a specific technology. What I would say to you is, before we talk about each of these, there are 6 there. Okay, just because there are 6 and these all sound like good things doesn't mean a business should be aiming for all 6 of these things at once. Okay, that way madness lies. Okay, so a business would usually choose which of those strategic objectives were particularly important for that particular business at a particular time and work towards those. We're not saying that all 6 of these should be aimed for at all times. What we want to be able to do here in terms of questions, and again I'm going to do the usual, show you some past questions as well once we've covered this. It's about being able to explain what these are, how information systems or a particular technology might help to achieve these, and to apply which is appropriate to a given scenario. Okay, so you'll see this within the case study that we're going to look at. Okay, so what do we mean by, first of all, operational excellence? It's improving our efficiency to attain a higher profitability. Information systems and technologies can be used to help us to be more efficient, to help us to be more productive. Broadly speaking, when we talk about operational excellence, we're talking about what we do as a business and doing that and then delivering excellence in how we do that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a little link to some of the later slides, which we're not going to cover in the session today, but they're there for you. One of the big areas where we look at operational excellence is when we look at the business value chain. Okay. When we look at the business value chain, we look at all the primary and secondary activities that go on in a business. We look at the value that's generated within those activities and how potentially we can generate the highest possible value through those activities. So I'm going to just flag that up for you. We may have a strategy around developing new products, services and business models. Okay, a business model is just how a company produces, delivers and sells the product or the service to create wealth. Okay, so is it about developing a new product, a new service, or a fundamentally different way of doing business to get that product or that service to the customer? Okay, so some examples of those new business models include new things that have been developed, things like Spotify, streaming services, okay, things like Netflix. Okay, so streaming services, new business models, new ways of getting the service to the customer. Okay, do you remember DVDs? Okay, sorry. Okay, but look at the business models that you're aware of in the last couple of years, okay? Even things like, do you remember when an iPod was the new thing, okay? Why would you, and now you're thinking, why on earth would I store music? What? Crazy notions, okay? So look, they're talking about the different business models that have been developed. How can information systems and technology help with this? Well, it's about identifying opportunities for that. It's about being an enabling tool, okay? So we might develop new products, new services, new business models based on information that we already have, that we store, okay? That we identify from our customers, from our processes, etc., and that we can mine and we can use to identify potential opportunities. Okay, we might also similarly use information systems, particular technologies to, for example, analyze external data to identify opportunities for new products or services, etc. We might use collaboration tools in terms of developing new products and services, and that's something that we're going to see in terms of the case study we're going to look at. Customer and supplier intimacy, okay, so an objective of the organisation might be to develop our customer and supplier intimacy. This kind of links into some of the things, particularly with customer focus, we've been talking about with CRM, okay. So we want to develop as a company by focusing on our relationships with our customers and our suppliers. So it may be about improving our relationships with our customers to encourage them to buy more, serving them well, leading them to return, raising revenue and raising profits. So think about, there are retailers that do this really, really well. Think about things like, hotel chains that remember things about your preferences, okay? Depends on the hotels you're staying in. Have to say it's not the hotels I'm staying in. But there are some hotels apparently that remember your pillow preference. Nice. When we're partners in firms, we can stay in those sorts of hotels. Okay, but that's that sort of idea of intimacy, knowing your customer, having the information on your customer that helps you to optimize the service that you give them. Okay. Similarly, it might be about knowing your customer well enough to know that they will respond well to certain deals or certain offers, which is probably, let's face it, where the rest of us are. Supplier intimacy as well, making sure that our suppliers are incredibly important within the business. Okay, we want to make sure that we get the best value from our engagements with our suppliers. We also want to make sure that those suppliers are reliable, that they're providing us with good quality products, etc. So making sure that we have those, kind of intimacy of relationship with them is really important in terms of making sure that that is, where appropriate, a continuing relationship and a relationship that's of value for our organisation. Improved decision making. Okay, a lot of this is obviously about making sure that we have accurate information. You talk about, I tend to talk about with my first years, we always talk about, desirable characteristics of information. You've probably heard this before. If you want to get information to people, you want to make sure that it's timely, it's relevant, it's accurate, all of those sort of sensible things. Okay, it's no different here. We want to make sure that the people who are making decisions in our organisations have access to information that is for them on a timely basis, that's relevant to the decision being made, that it's reasonably accurate, and obviously these things can kind of trade off against each other as well, depending on the decision that's being made. But the better the information that we have, if we don't have that sort of information, that's when we get overproduction, underproduction, misallocation of resources, and those poor outcomes can raise costs, can lose us customers, can damage some of the other things that we're trying to do, damage our operational excellence, maybe damage our ability to deliver customer and supplier intimacy. Competitive advantage, and I've put a little star on competitive advantage because competitive advantage is referred to here. It also refers into some of the slides that I'm going to leave for your own reading about things like competitive forces and things like that as well. So that's why the little star is there. Competitive advantage really about doing something better than the competition. Okay, what as a business do you do better than your competitors do? Okay, and I think remember that that's not just about. I think sometimes we tend to think about that as, you know, the best product, a better product, or a better service. So sort of product or service differentiation. But actually your competitive advantage can come from a range of areas, okay? So your competitive advantage as an organisation might be that you can offer, say you're a retailer, you can offer next day delivery, okay? Most retailers can't do that. Has Argos done that down here? They do it in the north. They'll do next day delivery or same day delivery in the north. Ah, there you go. Okay. There you go. Okay. So Smiths do it. So aren't you? So yeah. So if you need that bike urgently, okay. If there's a full-on tantrum going on over there, okay. If you need that toy urgently, you know that's a source of competitive advantage. Absolutely. Amazon Prime it would be an example of that as well. So that's maybe a source of competitive advantage, being able to do that and do it quickly. Your ongoing service could be a source of competitive advantage. Okay. Some people will buy from particular brands because they know they've had great service there in the past. Even if something has gone wrong, they will buy again because they know they got great service from them. Okay, it can be about. It can also be a source of competitive advantage to be cheaper. Okay, that you can do it cheaper than your competitors can do it. Okay, I don't know. Is that Smith's Toys down here as well? I'm spending some time there as well recently. It's good to know. Okay, so things like responding in real time. Okay, the last one there is about survival as well. Information technology is increasingly necessary to a range of businesses where it historically wasn't particularly necessary anymore. How many businesses now do you go on, and even if you don't need to use their website to use their service, you actually go to the website to have a look at it. Okay, I'm footloose and fancy free in Dublin tonight. Okay, so I'm out for dinner tonight. What have I done? I've checked TripAdvisor. I've checked their website. I had a look at their little menus and things like that. 10 years ago, restaurants didn't need to have a website. Now you kind of do because everybody else has one. Okay, so it's this idea that information technology sometimes create this situation where the industry has changed, what your competitors are doing has changed, and you kind of, for survival, you need to kind of go along with that. Another big example of this is the example actually that's in the textbook is about Citibank, which I think created the ATM. Okay, once somebody created the ATM, that was it. All banks had to have it. Let me give you an example that's closer to home. Credit unions, online banking. Okay. We all expect, don't we, to have online banking, okay? It's one of the biggest existential threats to credit unions in Ireland at the moment, which obviously is a huge body of organisations within Ireland. One of the biggest threats that they face is the increasing expectation of online banking, which is fine if you're Bank of Ireland and you're Santander and you're this or that or other organisation. If you're a small credit union, that's an incredible infrastructure investment to put that in place, to share that, okay? So industry changes for survival. Sometimes organisations are pushed into making changes that they'd rather not be. A similar one, governmental regulations that require additional record keeping. Okay, so maybe where you didn't have to keep information before and suddenly you do, and you need a system that will help you to maintain that. We were talking about charities earlier on. A big aspect of this is there's a lot of talk in charities at the moment about demonstrating your impact or demonstrating your effectiveness. Okay, how do we know that when you give, your £5 a month or your whatever it is you're given, how do you know that that has an impact? Okay, if we're pushing charities to increasingly report on the impact of the work that they do, then they need systems in order to be able to store that information, analyse that information, okay, and that's perhaps not something that they want to spend their money on. They would maybe rather spend their money on frontline services than tracking performance management information. But increasingly, it's what their funders demand, okay, it's a cost of doing business. Okay, so bear in mind that information technologies can facilitate those sorts of either governmental regulations, funding requirements, etc. Okay. Okay, this is an example. This is a past question which we're not going to look at, but it's there for you. In fact, you've got the August 17 paper. This is a case study question. It was about supply chain management, assisting in maintaining competitive advantage. And it tells you that in your answer, you should clearly explain your understanding of SCM systems and competitive advantage. And what I want to tell you is that's a 14-mark question, and it is not an SCM question. It is fundamentally a competitive advantage question, okay? You need to be, I think there's something like 3 marks for talking about what SCM is, and yes, you need to understand what an SCM is, okay, in order to be able to answer the question, but fundamentally, that's a question about competitive advantage. Okay, so I'd strongly recommend that you have a look at that question. We're obviously not going to look at it now because we haven't looked at SCM and it's a big part of the context. Okay, so the last bit of content that I really want to look at in detail is this idea of, in fact, I'm looking at the time. I'm not going to look at this in detail. I'm going to leave these slides with you. Okay, so the slides that I'm going to leave with you, okay, these 2 areas here, okay, Porter's competitive forces model and the generic strategies associated with it, and the value chain, okay, are both important areas per the educator's briefing, okay. But part of the reason why I'm flagging them to you here is, look, to be honest with you, there is a lot of overlap between what is identified as core in terms of strategies and in terms of competitors in the business environment and what's flagged as important. Okay, so I would suggest to you that a good understanding of those, you know, it's flagged as important, but they're very, very commonly examined. You'll see a range of past paper questions that I've put on the slides for you. Have a look at those. Okay, I'm very conscious sometimes that if you think about core and important, there's a risk that you could, and I suspect because, let's face it, you've taken the time to be here, you're probably not the students that are going to do this, but there's a risk that you look at 4 core areas and you think, oh, there's only 4 topics I need to look at. Okay, and don't realise actually how broad those areas are, how often the questions overlap with bits and pieces like that. Okay, so I think just be careful with that. I'm just going to click through these slides. Okay, again, not that it's not important, just that we don't have time. Very quickly, I've made a few of these points already, so I'm going to rattle through the slides very quickly. The key issue here in this paper is the application of knowledge. We've talked about minutes per mark. Use that to allocate your time and length of answer. Can I tell you, you don't want to do that for the first time in the exam. You want to do that in your preparation beforehand. I would always recommend to my students, I would use past paper questions throughout my preparation. Okay, so I would always use, I would look at a topic, cover a particular topic, and then I would do the past paper questions that are associated with that. But I would always keep maybe 2-3 past papers for right at the very end as a test of my knowledge, but also as a test of my exam technique, okay? And actually sit down, and I know I appreciate how hard it is to find 3 hours together to do some of this stuff, but actually sit down and do a paper in 3 hours and see where you get to. You may go one way or the other. I would be surprised if you found you were writing hard at it for 3 hours. What I suspect you might find is you're done in an hour and a half, and then you realise, actually, maybe I haven't put enough detail in there, okay? Maybe I haven't answered all the questions fully, okay? As I say, the feedback that I've had is that this is not usually a very time-pressured exam, so make sure that you're giving me enough detail, okay? Be really clear what's compulsory and what's optional. Please don't answer 4 questions in section B. I just can't mark them, okay? I'll mark the first 3, can't mark the 4th, okay? Which is rubbish if you started a question, left it, and then went and did question 6, okay? I have to mark the first 3. Okay, be aware. Follow the instructions, answer only the questions required in section B, and also specifically within questions where there are a number of responses specified, give that number in the appropriate detail. If I'm giving you an 8-mark question and I'm asking you for 4 of something, I'm expecting kind of 2 marks worth for each, Okay, so I'm expecting a wee bit more detail than perhaps if it was just kind of a markage. Okay. If I ask you for 4 and you give me 6, I will mark the first 4. Okay, the same principle applies. Okay, so if those first 4, okay, were there was less detail than some of the later ones, you've tied my hands, okay, and you're wasting your time. Okay, so if there's 4, give me 4. Okay, that also kind of links to the age-old point about plan your answer. Okay, so before you start, don't rush into starting to answer a question. Think about I know I've got 6 points in my head, what are my 4 best points? Okay, don't rewrite the question. Every year people do this, they rewrite the question. I don't understand this. Is this an exam technique that somebody tells you to do? Oh, don't do it. 1B, 1C, please, God, you don't have, I'm not testing your handwriting. Okay, don't rewrite questions.
Mikey, as I write it, it sticks in your head bits that you want. I don't know, that's just my...
I presume there must be a technique behind this.
Yeah, that's as I'm writing it makes me think.
Okay, can you not just circle the exam paper? That's what most of us do. Get your highlighter out. You know, you go into this, and this is a girl thing where you go into the exam with multiple coloured pens. Okay. Maybe it's not a girl thing. Gentlemen? Does any... No, it's a girl thing. It's a girl thing. Okay. It's your own time. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Diagrams and tables can be really useful. I'm a very visual person in terms of learning things, so I do draw spider diagrams of things. Okay, if that floats your boat, great. There are lots of diagrams in Loudon that are actually really, really helpful. If it helps you to answer the question to draw a diagram, this going into this, rock on, okay, brilliant, no problem at all. But make sure that you explain, make sure that the risk is with diagrams, it's the same with a table or with a bullet, that you don't explain, okay, that you don't give enough detail. So just be really careful with that. And that's the only points I want to make there. From the learning outcomes, I want to talk about case studies. Now, what I will tell you is we're going to look very quickly at a case study, and it's going to be really quickly. We're going to look very quickly at a case study. I'm also writing an article about case studies with kind of examples and things like that. That will be online for you by Christmas. This is something that I just think I would love to see students score better in honesty. I just think every year, there are mistakes that I see every year, and I'd love to not see them, okay? That's me. What you're expected to be able to do, okay, and this is from the learning outcomes, you're expected to be able to critically analyse IT-based case studies, incorporating their strategic and practical knowledge of information systems, and haven't we banged on about that point quite a lot today? Incorporating strategic and practical knowledge to real-life business situations, okay? So it's a really fundamental learning outcome within this particular course. Okay, the 3 issues that I see, and I see every year, okay, the first one is lack of detail or understanding in the knowledge of the specific aspect of information systems, okay? Sometimes the issue is that people are not clear enough about the technology. Sometimes the issue is that they obviously have not really thought very much about strategic objectives before, okay? A case study will find that out. Okay, because it's not going to be enough to kind of have a kind of 2-line definition. You're going to need to have a better understanding, because if you don't have that understanding, it's very hard to apply it, and you will find that you'll give yourself away. Okay, so making sure that you've got the kind of underlying knowledge, that's pretty key. Okay, that's a big issue, and that's why I get really short answers. It's usually I can usually tell that it's just because people have looked at it and gone, what about, I could have given you a very basic definition, but that was it. Okay, and that's unfortunately when people don't do well in questions where other people do really well. An SCM question. The August 17 paper, actually, the responses were really quite poor. And I think part of it was because people had like a very general knowledge of SCM, could have given me like a very brief description of what it was, but hadn't really engaged with it, hadn't really thought about it more. Okay, so didn't have that detail to give me when they were asked to apply it. Okay, number 2 is the rarer of 2 and 3. Okay, number 2 is getting carried away with the real life business situation and not showing the knowledge of the specific aspect of information systems. Okay, this happened in the August 16 paper. It was a training provider. And one of the things that was mentioned was about this training provider having a very kind of dated student interface. Okay, the number of rants I got about how important it was to have a good quality student interface. Okay, I don't know what I tapped into, okay, but a lot of people were very, very clear that it was very, very important to have a good website for students to access. I have no idea where they got this from, okay. The The problem was that people got so carried away with that. They were writing from their own experience because it was something that people were familiar with. They wrote from their own experience. They gave me answers the man in the street could have given me, instead of remembering that actually you're sitting in an information systems exam. If you give me something the man in the street could give me, why would I give you credit for that? Okay, so if you ever find yourself sitting in an exam writing stuff that you knew before you ever opened an information systems textbook, hit yourself a dig in the head, stop, and then go back and start again. Okay, the same goes for things like, it comes up every time I ask a question about social anything, social CRM, social commerce, social marketing, you name it, I get all this stuff about Facebook. Seriously, okay? Bear it in mind. Okay, so don't get carried away with the situation and not remember that you've got to show me your knowledge. Okay, the other side of this is to dump your knowledge of subject X without linking it to the case. Okay, and actually it happens more often than you would think, because somebody's looked at the question and they're like, oh, thank God, it's CRM, I know something about that, blah. Okay, and you know what, we've all done it in exams. Just be very careful about doing it in a case study. Okay, so those to me are the three areas where people go wrong. Okay, very quickly, let's have a quick look at the April 17 case study. Okay, so for those of you in the room, you've got it in front of you. The case is Aramed. You should have April as well. Oh, sorry, I'm holding April. Can I get you to pass? Okay, coming back to you. Apologies. Okay, so we're a wee bit short of time. Okay, so ideally what I would like to have done is just say to you, have a read at this case study, and then we'll have a quick chat through. I tell you what, we've got 2 minutes. Just read the case study very, very quickly. Okay, most people got a chance to certainly see most of it anyway. Yeah. Okay. I'm just conscious I want to leave us a wee bit of time at the end for questions as well, so that's why I sort of want to rush this a wee bit. Sorry about that. First things first. Anybody read the questions before they read the rest of it? Anybody else? Do that, okay? Especially if you need to read something quickly, okay? Read your questions first of all, and then you know what you're looking for when you're reading, okay? Really very, very, very helpful, okay? One of the best tips you can have about a case study. In terms of this particular case study question, okay, a few things just to pick up. We've got the divisions of production, distribution, and R&D. We've got a geographically dispersed business here. Okay, so we have distribution, which is responsible for sales, marketing, and distribution. They sell to third-party distributors. Okay, so that's important because the customer is the third-party distributor. They're not selling to the end user, the person who takes the vitamins, painkillers, whatever it is they're selling. That's important because we're going to talk about CRM systems. Okay, so the advantages, disadvantages of CRM for this particular business, focus on the fact that we're talking about third-party distributors. It's just important to keep that in mind because that's an important part of the context. We have an R&D division, which is responsible for developing innovative new products, and there are these centres of excellence that happen in these different universities: France, Sweden, Malaysia, and Canada. The countries are not important. What's important is this idea that you've got these different centres of excellence which are geographically dispersed. Okay, they've got surplus funds to invest, and they've got a number of proposals. The first proposal that they have is about a big machine, and the big machine will make the business more productive, and they'll be able to, produce 42,000 tablets a day. Okay, and the comment that you get is that actually, look, you've got somebody who's an operations person who's saying, look, I can understand when you tell me that we're going to increase our productivity. I can understand what that means for our business. What I don't understand is you've got these other proposals. What do these mean for our business? And that's kind of really at the heart of information systems for us, okay? It's talking about, well, what does this technology mean in the context of this business? What are the opportunities that it creates? And we probably also want to think about maybe what are the risks that it poses, the challenges that it poses, okay? So you can straight away see that this is what I've been banging on about all day, okay? We've then got, so it's this idea that we've got CRM for one, and then the other one is about the collaborative tools, okay? So part A asks us what is meant by the term CRM, and to evaluate the possible advantages of the proposal to invest in a CRM system for RMEd. It's only 6 marks, okay? Roughly speaking, in terms of my marking scheme, I was giving about 3 marks for the description of what a CRM system was, and 3 marks for saying, okay, why might this be of benefit to RMEd? Okay, so some of the examples that we would have been looking at. Okay, so we want to think about, we've got the generic advantages in the back of our mind, and specific to this organisation, we want to think about, for example, the critical importance of meeting customer needs. Okay, so making sure that this is an important product that they don't want to have a stock out of. Okay, because that's going to have a major impact for these distributors, because these distributors are selling on to pharmacies and chemists and this sort of thing. They will let their customers down if you let them down. So it's really important to have a good, intimate relationship with that particular customer. Okay, in terms of innovation, they're developing new products and new services, so it may well be particularly important for them to get feedback from these customers, okay, to store that information, to be able to analyse that. What is selling? Where is it selling? Are there particular parts of the world where, for example, the painkillers of choice have codeine in them as opposed to aspirin? Sorry. I know nothing about pharmaceuticals. I know about that. Okay. So what is it that's being provided? What's being sold? And what information are you getting in terms of feedback? From a financial perspective, it's always important to identify who are your profitable customers. Where is there a higher amount of churn or a lower amount of churn? How can we retain these customers and so on? Okay, so it's just trying to pull in some of those generic things and make them relevant to the case. Okay. Part B is about collaborative technologies. Okay, that's a specific group of technologies. Okay, again, this was something where, because it seems like it's, and I'll agree with you, it seems like a slightly vague term, but it's actually talking about things like Microsoft SharePoint, which some of you might be familiar with, and tools like that actually allow online collaboration. What I got in answer to that question was a lot of stuff about how wonderful emails are. Okay, again, man on the street kind of stuff. So hard for me to give a lot of marks for that. Part C then, 4 possible strategic objectives that RMED might pursue and how investment in information systems, including the suggestions above, could enable the achievement of these objectives. Okay. One of the things that actually happened quite a lot is quite a few people listed that obviously learned the 6 strategic objectives and gave all 6 back to me because they were delighted to see it come up. Okay, so like, bleh, vomit. No sense in that at all. Okay, so they gave me the 6 and either explained all 6 in detail or went on and explained 4 in detail. Either which way, ask for 4. You only need to talk about 4. You could pick any 4. Okay, as long as you made the case of how information systems would help and how particularly some of the things that were being suggested here could help. Okay, so some of the really obvious ones, customer and supplier intimacy, we're talking about a CRM. Wouldn't that help with customer and supplier intimacy? Of course it would. Okay, collaboration tools, new product and service development. Would collaboration tools help with that? Of course they would. Okay, operational excellence. Okay, and how do information systems help with that? Well, providing better information on the business. Maybe some of the information from the CRM would be helpful in relation to that as well. Thinking about improving the service for customers would give us better information on to deal with queries, improving the service that we offer to them. A whole range of other ones as well. Competitive advantage. Opportunities to set yourself apart from the competitor because you're delivering better customer service or because you're innovating new products or new models of ways of doing business. A particular thing is survival, okay, in terms of thinking about the organisation that we have here. The pharmaceuticals business, it may be particularly important for them, depends on what area they work in, but it may be particularly important for them to innovate, to develop new products rather than be left behind, okay, and there are lots of different types of industries where you can make exactly the same comment. Okay, so here I was looking for 4, probably giving a mark for giving me a clear sense that you understood the strategic objective, and another mark for giving me examples of how the information system could be of benefit in doing that. Okay, make sense? Okay, part D then, in response to the comment about I don't know how to value this. Okay, this is an area that comes up as important. It's about valuing information systems, and basically the idea is it's about how would you try to quantify the costs and benefits associated with this type of system. Okay, it's covered, it's in Loudon and Loudon. Quite a lot of people didn't attempt that question, and quite a lot of people gave me things like NPV and payback, probably using stuff from management accounting. Okay. And in honesty, I gave a few marks for that, but it was kind of capped because the issue with that is how on earth would you estimate the cash inflows, okay? And that was basically the issue that people hadn't dealt with. So we're talking about models like the total cost of ownership model, okay? Those are dealt with. So I think just have a look at that. It's something that is important as opposed to core, but does come up fairly regularly, and it's usually a 3 or 4 mark question. Mm-hmm. No, it's not really quantitative. That what you're looking at here is basically a way in which you could literally quantify, put some sort of number value on how would you understand the costs and the value associated with these. Okay. Yeah. Okay, folks. I'm sorry that case study was sort of rattled through that very quickly. Have you got any questions specifically on the case study first of all, or on case study approaches? No? Sure. Okay. Folks, general questions on anything else? Anything you've got a burning desire to ask me? It's Friday afternoon. For those of you who are watching online, there is deathly silence in the room as everybody starts to shuffle papers. Listen, folks, if that's the case, thank you all very, very much indeed for being here, and thank you for watching online, for those of you who are watching online. If there is anything specific that you think of in relation to this topic, okay, or in relation to the exams more generally, I'm presuming you can contact Rating about that, and if there's anything particularly important that needs to be passed on to me, I'm sure it will be. Can I just say good luck with engaging with your e-learning, with your classes over the next couple of months, and of course good luck with the exam as well. All right, thank you all very much.